от нас требуют на своей территории войска.
They demand that we take our own troops deployed on our own territory and send them back to the barracks. Meanwhile, the US, Canada and the UK have virtually a permanent presence in the Baltic states and in Northern Europe. In general, they pretend it's on a rotation basis, but it's all a smokescreen. The British have established naval bases in Ukraine, in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. Russia is not happy with that. We find it completely unacceptable. You ask why the issue has become so urgent today. Well, let's not mince words. It's because the West is clearly overreaching. They've been acting in violation of all of their obligations, disregarding common sense. Essentially, they've launched a campaign to try and escalate the situation. 7 years ago, the EU demolished all relevant mechanisms, including those aimed at discussing practical aspects of international security. Now that we've approached the US and NATO, with the latter we still have the Russia-NATO Council, if only on paper. And the NATO-Russia Founding Act is still intact too. When it comes to the EU, on the other hand, all communication channels have been shut down completely by our European partners. This is a question you should bring up with Josep Borrell and the EU member states. As for the prospect of establishing separate dialogue channels with the EU, independent of NATO or the US, well, that's actually up to the US and NATO. I'm not sure they're willing to give Europe a modicum of freedom in that aspect. We do not worry too much about who will handle negotiations if this endeavour is spearheaded by the United States. It is they who shape security policy in Europe and other parts of the world, for that matter. After all, NATO is now actively staking its claims elsewhere. As I said, the ball is in the EU's court. We've not cut our ties with them. And you know that we talked with Josep Borrell last year. We're ready to keep the communication going. It all depends on whether he'll be allowed to resume dialogue with the Russian Federation and how meaningful the issues they might raise will be.
Очень надеюсь, что больше не придется.
I really hope we don't have to do anything of the kind ever again, but we have to keep our powder dry, so to speak. That's how the Russian proverb goes. God forbid something like that should happen. But we're doing everything to prevent it, including through the relevant CSTO bodies. But if, God forbid, something happens, we must be ready, because there have been enough attempts to undermine the situation in Central Asia and other CSTO countries from the outside. These attempts, in fact, have become much more brazen, daring and dangerous after the Americans fled Afghanistan along with the rest of the NATO troops, leaving the country in the state we see it now, a nation that has to rebuild its statehood. We're dead set against having the North Atlantic Alliance right on our doorstep, all the more so considering the course pursued by the Ukrainian leadership, both the former and the current one, unfortunately. Moreover, this is a red line. It really is, and they know it. Another thing I'd like to point out is that even if Ukraine doesn't join NATO, it could still sign bilateral agreements with the United States or the UK or any other Western power capable of building military infrastructure there, setting up military bases on the Azov Sea. This is equally unacceptable to Russia.
President Putin
President Putin has always made it a priority to protect Russia's sovereignty, and it's been of particular importance recently. We know all too well how hard the West has been attacking the sovereignty of Russia and any other country that pursues its own independent foreign policy. It relies on hybrid warfare and even uses direct military deterrence. That's something we already mentioned in the context of Russia-NATO relations. It attacks through mass media and is very manipulative with soft power mechanisms. There are lots of state-financed NGOs, for example, and so on and so forth. All this could probably fly with some countries, but Russia finds it absolutely unacceptable.
когда по просьбе президента Казахстана
When the CSTO acted on the request of Kazakhstan's president and sent in the peacekeeping mission, Washington responded by demanding Kazakhstan explain why they had turned to the CSTO for help, and also demanding that Russia's forces leave Kazakhstan as soon as the mission was over. The mission is over. Our troops are leaving. But in Iraq, American troops show no signs of leaving, despite the fact that their mission is over. And on top of that, your parliament has already passed the bill ordering the US to withdraw its military presence. You see, once again, it's the case of something being more equal than others.